Hello, welcome to Workers Education once again. My name is Joseph Watuleke, your facilitator. Today's lecture continues from what we held last week when we introduced the course on Workers Education, and last week we were looking at the historical perspective of Workers Education. Today we are going to dwell much on conceptualizing Workers Education, and we shall be looking at the key components or the key terms which constitute workers' education. We shall majorly be looking at the keywords like what is education, what is workers' education, what is labor, what are labor studies, so that we can clearly understand the course, workers' education and labor studies. And I would like you to take in interest to these key terms because they build a foundation upon which the rest of the course is going to be built. So first, let's look at the words education and labor. Education, in its sense, refers to a process through which persons acquire and retain knowledge, skills, experiences, and attitudes for use in their daily lives, in their community, and society as a whole. People attain education through different modes. It can be a formal education, or it can be informal. Many others acquire knowledge through non-formal. So in this case, we are looking at education as being a source of change. And as you can see, we see that education makes a relative permanent change in the behavior of such participants who take part in education. When you are educated, we expect a change in you. We expect your behavior to be different from all people who have not gone to school. And that's why we always have a saying in our communities that when you are educated, you are different from others. And if you behave otherwise, they will always term you as uneducated or you wasted the education. When we talk about labor, I know this is a term which is common to many of us, and we always look at it as a factor of production. And we are looking at labor as active manpower available for use in the production process. When you remember, for some of you who did economics or commerce, you were looking at labor as one of the factors of production aside land and capital. So labor can also mean a group of people with similar or common philosophy and ideology. You can say, for example, we are a labor force in the field of adult and community education. We are professionals with an ideology of adult and community education. So a group of people with similar or common philosophy and ideology can also be termed as labor. Let's also look at labor studies. Labor studies are those special studies which endeavor to explain, describe, and analyze theories about organizations or institutions and behaviors of labor markets in industrializing, and post-industrialized economies. In other words, labor studies are interested in trying to describe the behavior of the labor market, the institutions which hire workers, how they behave, how they recruit their workers, how they treat the workers, the challenges the workers face in the market will be explained by labor studies. And of course, we are looking at the industrialized societies, those which are just industrializing, and even those which are post-industrializing. How do they handle the labor? And how does labor behave in such kind of economies? And we are looking at labor studies as being a multidisciplinary field or multidisciplinary subject which draws from other fields in trying to assess the labor in the labor market and working people in the society. In other words, there is no specific one field of study which can explain the labor market. We draw from a number of studies like sociology, we shall look at history, we shall look at political economy to draw a close understanding of the labor market. And another key issue you need to understand in conceptualizing workers' education is work and employment. These two terms need to be differentiated such that we clearly develop our understanding of the course. So first we shall look at work. In the previous lecture, we had a serious debate on what actually work means and who is considered to be a worker. And here we are just going to note something very briefly about work. And we're trying to say that work is essentially a combination of tasks that an individual is required to perform. For example, when you wake up early in the morning, go to your office, you need to do some work. But what is that work that you're performing in Uganda or in the economy? And some of these include permanent or what we call full-time employment, where people are working on a full-time basis. But we also have people employed on temporary or part-time basis. In other words, their contract is not permanent, and they may not be entitled to retirement benefits as such. But we also have workers who are on probationary basis. In probation, you are working, but without a contract that has been confirmed. So, at the end of the probation period, you may receive the contract or the contract may be denied depending on how both parties are satisfied with the service of the probation worker. We also have what we call the casual workers who offer what we call casual work. We shall be looking at the concept of casualization of work at a later stage, but we also have what we call contract staff. Contract staff are working for a particular period of time as indicated in the contract. It can be for a month, it can be for a year, it can be for 2 years, and at the end of the contract, the workers or the employees' terms are terminated. Then you also have what we call apprenticeship or traineeship. Apprenticeship is trying to work on or learn on job. You are at work, but you are not fully employed. You are working while training. This may attract an allowance or there may be no pay that comes with this kind of work. Remember, just recently you were all doing your internship. And during internship, some of you got some allowance, others did not get any single shilling, but you learned on job. And that is what we call apprenticeship or traineeship. We also have what we call piecework or commission. People who work on commission. You deliver a particular piece of work and then you are paid a commission on it. This can be in terms of sales, in terms of advertisements, etc. Like we see people who do advertisements or sales promotion for people in insurance, in business, among others. The more sales you make, the more commission you earn. We also have what we call child or minor employment, which in many countries is prohibited, but if it is exercised, there are special terms that must be followed. And we shall also be looking at this later on as we look into human rights and workers' rights. And lastly, we have what we call the voluntary workers. Workers who work or who offer their service without expecting a pay, but they're interested in improving the welfare of the society. This list is not exhaustive. You can read more and establish more forms of employment. For now, we shall be looking at workers' education, the concept we would like to dig deeper into. So, what is workers' education? I'm sure everyone has been waiting to come across this definition as we have been dwelling on other concepts. In simple terms, we will look at workers' education as that kind of education specifically or specially designed for workers, and this can be in the form of a single training, like a one-day training, or it can be for a short period of time, like a week or a month. but also it can be in form of a practical talk to a simple group of farm workers, or they can even take a 3 years of tuition for the trade union workers or for a group of workers of an organization. In other words, it is a kind of education that is specially organized to meet the needs of the workers of a particular organization. Take an example. If an institution realizes they have a particular need, maybe their workers are doing badly in ICT, and yet the institution is taking on or embracing the use of ICT in their organization, they can organize a short talk or a short training, like for 1 month, for their workers to get used to using computers and other gadgets for ICT work. And that can be a form of workers' education. More of these examples shall be looked at later as we explore the components of workers' education. But we can also look at workers' education from the perspective of some authors like Whitehall College in 1995, who broadly defined workers' education as a process of acquiring knowledge, skills, and awareness, as well as appropriate attitudes for sustaining growth and performance of an individual worker, group, institution, and the whole society. In other words, workers' education should instill in a worker appropriate knowledge, appropriate skills, and appropriate attitudes for the individual workers' growth, but also for growth as a group of workers, as well as the institution in which they work and the society where they live as a whole. Workers' education concerns itself basically with the development of workers and understanding of labor problems in the broadest sense possible. In other words, workers' education should make workers understand their responsibilities, but also the problems that are encountered in the labor market. Workers' education, therefore, can be looked at as an instrument or a tool for building an effective, sound, and responsible labor movement in a given country. When we want to have a strong labor movement, then workers' education is one of the key tools that should be embraced. We shall quickly look at the purpose of workers' education. What is this workers' education intended to achieve? We see that the basic purpose of workers' education is to develop the workers' understanding of labor problems in the broadest sense possible. Workers' education is supposed to help the workers understand the labor problems such that they know that what they are going through is not maybe by accident or by mistake. Many times in the workers' education and practicing workers' education will bring in other objectives. But the key ones to look at here include individual development. Workers' education is supposed to be helpful in building an individual worker. And that means it is considered a universal instrument for advancing the dignity of man and for gladdening his existence. When a worker is fully trained and he has competence in what they're doing, their work life is always exciting. And they stand to work with dignity because they really understand what they are doing, other than being embarrassed at the place of work when you cannot perform what you expect to perform. But it will also apply to every power of thought and force of action to enlighten ignorance, alleviate misfortune, remove misery, and banish vice. Okay? Still, as a tool for individual development, workers' education is responsible for personal growth and well-being of a worker. Okay? We shall also look at the second objective, which is stability and coherence in society. The interaction between education and social change is clearly a more complex matter than it appears to such idealist reformers. And we're trying to say that to avoid many uprisings by workers in institutions, issues of conflicts at workplace can be avoided if workers' education is embraced and employers and employees know their rights and responsibilities. So we are trying to look at workers' education as ensuring stability, trying to ensure that people work in harmony in their workplaces. And this is especially important when workers understand their responsibilities and employers also know that they have an obligation to protect the workers' rights. So, workers' education in this case concerns itself with fairness and equality at the workplace or the society as a whole. Then the third objective we shall look at is change and transformation in society. Just like we looked at education as a tool for change, workers' education is also expected to cause a change and a transformation in society. It is a positive instrument of change rather than just a protection. Okay. It is not only aimed at protecting the workers and their rights, but it's also supposed to instill change in society. Its objective is not to fit workers for their individual struggle for existence, but for a collective struggle for emancipation. Workers' education is not like money's bridge as an end in itself, but as a means of social action. In other words, no individual worker should use workers' education as a bridge to their personal benefit without considering the whole or the group of workers as a whole. So it is a emancipatory tool for social action. And we shall look at the fourth objective, which is ensuring or attaining efficient workers' organization. We believe that workers' education is one important way of increasing the workers' organization's effectiveness. When workers are strongly trained in understanding the labor problems, understanding their responsibilities, understanding their rights, as well as the employers also knowing their responsibilities and the obligations, then there will be effectiveness and efficiency achieved. It enables unions to stand strong and achieve their objectives. And you remember, in the beginning we said one of the key tools of workers' education is understanding the labor movement education or the unions education. So once we have strong labor unions, then the organizations of work will also be efficient because unions stand together to fight for the workers' rights. The fifth objective, which is our last one among the objectives here, is that of improved socio-economic contributions from the workers and the organizations. And when we talk about this, we are embracing the issue of corporate social responsibility, whereby we expect that organizations which are working well should also benefit the societies in which they are living in or working in. And I will quote from one of the trade union specialists, the French union leader, who wrote that today trade unionism is the great weapon for combat. Tomorrow it will be the great rebuilder. In other words, trade unions now can be looked at as a tool for fighting for justice. But once institutions are built and they are standing on a strong foundation, they can build the economy tomorrow. And that means the goal of workers' education is to train workers in a capacity building for them to be effective in designing and informing policy issues, as well as being helpful to other small trade unions in the region. So, could this subject of workers' education be having some specific objectives apart from the broad ones we have looked at? We shall be looking at these four objectives as specific objectives. One of them is to improve, the student's ability to handle the tools of study and of social action. When you are into this course as a student of workers' education, we expect you to develop the ability to handle the tools of study as well as those of action, but also to arouse your interest in trade unionism. When your interest is aroused, then it should also be strengthened. And also, we look at workers' education as a natural sequence to give workers a better understanding of labor problems. So, workers' education in specific terms is aimed at helping workers understand the labor problems, including their political, economic, and social implications. And the fourth specific objective is to equip trade unionists with livelihood skills and appropriate positive attitudes for social responsibility. We shall also look at the features that does not meet their needs. That means that the need for workers' education must be generated from within the workers themselves and the organization for need of improving efficiency. Thirdly, workers' education must aim primarily at an understanding of labor, social, and economic problems of direct interest to workers and their organizations. Like we said at the beginning, that workers' education is aimed at helping workers understand labor problems in the broadest sense. Workers' education must help workers and their leaders to assume more industrial, civic, and social responsibilities. And that is another wonderful feature of workers' education. So, we shall move on to look at the tasks of workers' education. What tasks should workers' education perform or achieve? One of them is to arouse interest of workers in education and further studies. When workers go through the workers' education training, it should help them to develop interest in education and also further education. In other words, they should realize that what they know is not sufficient. There is need to know more, to learn more, and take more trainings to make themselves better at workplace. But once such interest is aroused, the next task of workers' education is supposed to be maintaining such kind of interest. You know, it is one thing to arouse interest in a person for further studies, but another thing to maintain such kind of interest, such that people really push on to desire learning. Also, the task of workers' education should include broadening that kind of interest in workers' education and in further studies. And lastly, it should be able to strengthen the interest and motivate the workers to study and continue studying. And that will bring us to the concept of lifelong learning in institutions and also the concept of working organization or learning organization. We shall look at the components of workers' education as one or as among the last things to look at in this lecture today. And the components we shall be looking at include basic skills, technical and vocational training, social and economic education, and then the cultural and scientific education. So, workers' education, to distinguish itself from other forms of adult education, it focuses itself with these four key components. One of them is basic skills. Workers' education should equip workers with basic skills for daily routine, which could include literacy for the illiterate workers. It could also include helping workers to get familiar with the working environment, as well as getting familiarized with the rights of workers and their responsibilities. But also, it should embrace technical and vocational training, which includes expertise required of work to pursue his or her duties. If workers are not having the expertise that are required to perform a particular task, workers' education can be handled whereby it can help to introduce some kind of technical training to equip these workers with the expertise which they will need to perform. We also have a component on social and economic education. This includes other forms of education like trade unionism, learning how to distribute resources appropriately, and also the general welfare of workers, which also covers the safety and the health of workers at workplace. And the fourth component of workers' education is the cultural and scientific education, which helps workers to understand the organizational philosophy. It is very important that workers know their organizational philosophy when they join an institution, such that they are part and parcel of that organization. And also, cultural and scientific education includes aspects like use of art, theater and drama, music, role plays to ensure socialization. Workers do not necessarily have to every time be performing only those tasks that are generating income to the organization or aiming at building the organizational goal. But they should also learn to socialize as workers. I'll give you an example here at Macquarie University in the College of Education and External Studies. Recently, we realized that as a way of life, we needed to participate in physical exercise. And so every Thursday, you will find the members of the College of Education going to the field to do some sports. These include playing football, netball, aerobics, dancing, etc. to keep physically fit, but also to socialize. And that is bringing the whole college together, and of course also attracting other colleges to join, and that brings us together as a university and builds our union as members of the same university. So I'm ending with this figure, trying to remind you of the key components of work education, which include the basic skills, technical and vocational training, social and economic skills, and cultural and scientific education. We shall end here today, and our next lecture will be looking at workers' rights, where we shall look at the individual and the collective rights of workers. I will implore you to start reading more about workers' rights as we meet in the next lecture. Thank you, and have a good time.